we're the world's largest international children's charity. We work with the most vulnerable children, families, and communities around the world. We're in 100 countries. What we're there to do is to give every child fullness of life.
So obviously, World Vision is, I would say, a faith-based charity. Can you talk to me about the importance of faith for you in your sort of leadership thinking?
I feel faith for me has always been part of my journey. So coming into World Vision, where we serve people of all faiths and none, every child deserves the best. So my best days are when I have a blank white sheet of paper.
Talk to me about the importance of creativity.
Because out of nothing, comes the most amazing, beautiful thing that you can imagine.
I think it was called like this wake-up call moment or something.
But it was a strong sense of calling. That's what I can say to you. It was a strong sense of knowing that I needed to be here at a time such as this.
You had that moment, then it became your reality. Sort of like the scary CEO.
All of that influences the way I work, the way I lead, and the way I think.
This adventurous approach means that you're going to meet a lot of failure.
We are going through change at the moment. Almost everybody in the sector is. It's also an opportunity, and I am a glass half full person.
Fola, thank you so much for coming on and doing an episode of Causes. How are you today? How are you sort of before the episode, before we dive in?
I am very well, Dave. Looking forward to this and so ready to go.
Amazing. All right, let's kick off. So what do we have to know about your childhood to understand Fola today?
So I was raised mostly in Nigeria. So I was born in the UK. My parents were here studying, and my brother and I sort of popped out during their studies here in the UK, and then we went back to Nigeria. So I did my primary, secondary, and university. So I studied architecture in Nigeria, and then came back to the UK over 30 years ago. So in terms of my reflection of who I am today, it's a bit of both. My Nigerian self and also my UK self.
Fantastic. Architecture, did you say?
Yes, I did.
Amazing. That's so tell us about, before I might take this bit out, but I'm curious. So tell us about your architectural background, where that led to. I'm interested in that.
So when I was in school, I was very good in certain subjects, So at the age of 16, you're trying to decide, okay, I like sciences, I like drawing, I like a bit of this. What am I going to do? And growing up in a place like Nigeria, you had very few options. You either did engineering, architecture, medicine. There was sort of this professional sort of options you had. So I chose architecture, and I loved it. And it was a 7-year study program. And as soon as I finished, I came to the UK. And there was a big difference between architecture in Nigeria and the UK, because in the UK, I found that I couldn't be as expressive as I would love to be. And I ended up going to study computing in Brunel and ended up at HSBC. So I still love architecture. I follow buildings around. I love old architecture. I love to design and create things, So there's a part of me that will always be an architect. But of course, my career took me along the lines of finance, banking, IT, accounting, and then into international development.
I mean, that's so interesting. I feel like of all the creative things, the sort of the output you get from architecture is, it's so tangible. You walk into a building, you see a building. Yeah. I guess my question, and we'll come on to the sort of career journey stuff in a second, but talk to me about the importance of creativity for you in your role now, even though, the HSBC, all of this sort of private sector stuff you've done, and now, executive at World Vision UK. Talk to me about how important creativity is for you in that, as a thread throughout all of that.
Very important. So my best days are when I have a blank white sheet of paper and you say to me, here is something that I'm trying to do, or I'm trying to solve, or I'm trying to work through, and you give me a blank sheet of paper and I scribble all over it. Those are my most creative moments, because out of nothing, comes the most amazing, beautiful thing that you can imagine. And then when you then see that come to life, it's inexplicable. So for me, in my role here, um, I love paper. So if you come into my office, you'll see lots of paper, and I scribble a lot. The first thing I do in the morning is a blank sheet of paper, and I'm scribbling and I'm drawing. And it makes sense to me. It may not make sense to anybody else, but it makes a lot of sense to me, because in that scribble is the answer to something I'm trying to do. And that's like architecture. In the scribble is the best design I'm trying to create. Haven't gotten a brief from somebody that says, I want this, I want that. So it's been a thread throughout my whole life. And I think it plays out more now so for me when I think about the space I sit in now, where there's complexity, there's challenge, there's the unexpected changes every single day. You have to be creative. You really have to be creative. And I love that.
Fantastic. So yeah, give us a sort of whistle stop tour through your sort of career moments to international development, and then how have you found yourself at World Vision, and what have the steps been along the way?
So I haven't studied architecture. I ended up in HSBC. So my first professional job was working in the bank. And that came because I had studied computing science, and they were looking for on their fast track graduate scheme. So I entered HSBC, did lots of roles across senior management teams, then went into IBM from HSBC. So after HSBC, I got to IBM, and I'd just done an MBA then in financial services. So I joined IBM as a consultant. And really what I was doing with IBM, which still travels in today, is sitting in the middle of the business and the IT. So I was always translating business problems into technical solutions. I left IBM after a number of years and started my own company, Indices, and that was when I stepped into the world of international development, because I then met a few CEOs of tier funds and Samaritan's Purse and some of those big Christian organizations. And I honestly didn't know international development as a sector until then. But I stumbled into it, and I started to do some work with them around strategy and fundraising. So really working around what are their strategies for the next few years, but also how are they going to raise the income, and how could I use my skills to support them in doing that. So that led me on to a time at the Open University, where I stayed for a number of years leading sort of their projects across sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Asia. So I kept getting more and more into this world of international development. Doing that, then I think beyond that, I then got an opportunity with Mazars. So Mazars is an accounting firm, and they sort of gave me an opportunity to be one of their global partners, leading the international development work across most of their countries. So I did that for a number of years. It was whilst I was with Mazars as I stepped off Mazars, I joined the board of World Vision UK. And that was about 7 years ago. And then from the board, then I became the CEO of World Vision UK.
Can you talk? So in the research I was doing, there was I think it was called like this wake up call moment or something. Can you tell me about the sort of wake up call moment you had with, like, I want to spend my time on international development type stuff?
So there have been a number of wake-up call moments in my life. The big wake-up call that got me into the role I am now was I was on the board of World Vision UK. Hadn't got a clue. Wasn't even thinking about CEO. Wasn't thinking of anything like that. And I remember it was the 24th of March. That's much of a wake-up, 2023. And I just felt this nudge inside of me about becoming the next CEO of World Vision UK. At that point in time, it didn't make sense because I was on the board, and governance is very different from management. And I'm thinking, you're kidding me. And I remember speaking to the board about it, or the board chair then, who then said, oh, okay. And I said, you know what, don't do anything with it. It's just this strong feeling. I'm going off to Zambia. And I went off to Zambia to go and see a World Vision project in Zambia. And then the board chair called me and said, do you still have that nudge? And I said, well, I haven't really done anything with it for the last 1 week. cut long story short, stepped off the board, had to go through a thorough process, and here I am. But it was a strong sense of calling. That's what I can say to you. It was a strong sense of knowing that I needed to be here at a time such as this. And I now understand why, because of the sector challenges and all of that we're going through. But it was that strong sense that a World Vision needed me at this particular point in time. So it was a real defining moment for me, and one of the stories I tell that changed sort of the trajectory of my life in some respects.
Is there, like, could you be descriptive about the calling? How did that feel? Like, how did it present itself?
Okay. So it was a Thursday night. I had gone to bed, and I woke up in the morning, and the first thought that popped into my heart was, you're going to be the next CEO of World Vision UK. Now, it was the most ridiculous feeling as well, because I had just done a day of shortlisting interviews for the next CEO of World Vision UK, which was not me. So just to tell you how much that nudge was. And it was so strong on the inside of me that I felt I needed to speak to the board chair about this because of integrity, conflict, and all those things that were just around it. And I remember a conversation with the board chair, and he said, sort of think about it over the weekend and let's see what's going on with you on Monday, because I stepped off the process completely. And over the weekend, all I can say to you, Dave, is on Saturday morning at about 3 a.m. in the morning, there was this strong urge again around World Vision UK and all the things I could do as a CEO, that I had to get out of bed, get my dog. I have a dog called Tyson, he's a boxer. Get Tyson, walk around my village just to clear my head. And I'm screaming and I'm talking to myself and I'm saying, this does not make sense. What is going on? This was not the plan. That's how strong it was. And I remember coming back home at about 6 or something in the morning and waking my husband up and saying, I need to tell you something. I don't know what's going on here, but I just have this really strong urge and this strong sense. And it was all inside of me, and lots of screaming and shouting outside, because I am that kind of person, but it was all happening inside me. So that's how strong it was. It was really, really strong. And of course, at that time, I did not think it was possible, because I did say no to, which I just didn't. But it did happen. So it must have been strong enough to draw me to where I am today.
It's amazing. What was Tyson's advice?
I think Tyson is a very smart and wise dog. He stays very quiet through all of this. He kind of like watches me like, okay, is this a moment? And then we continue the walk. So I always think that if that dog could talk, there'll be so many secrets he'll let out in one way or the other.
So that, you had that moment, then it became your reality. Tell us about that moment where you found out, like, this is going to be what I'm doing now.
Joy and peace were the two key words I would say to you. Joy, because somehow what I felt, and I'm a faith person, so I'm a person of faith. So of course, a lot of that instinct is linked into my faith, but seeing the reality of that coming to pass brought joy. It brought peace. And I remember when the board said to me, okay, we've decided, that you will be the next CEO. I just laughed. I literally just laughed, because it was kind of like, it was a laughter of joy, but it was also a laughter of, you're kidding me. This thing actually happened, as I felt it a month or so ago. But also it was a laughter because I love World Vision UK, and I haven't been on the board and serving on the board for the past 5 years before I had such a deep appreciation of the work and the impact that it does with children around the world. So it was also a sense of privilege that I would be able to serve in this way and use sort of the skills that I've acquired over the last 30 years of adventure. Really, it's been an adventure, in my career. And sort of, it felt like everything was coming together in that moment. And it was a very purposeful moment. So delight and joy and privilege.
Fantastic. For people who are watching or listening and don't know sort of that what World Vision and World Vision UK is, just give us a little sort of top line overview as to what the organisation is here to do.
So we're the world's largest international children's charity. We work with the most vulnerable children, families, and communities around the world. We're in 100 countries. And really, what we're there to do is to give every child fullness of life. And we use that word to say we're there to eliminate poverty and the devastating effect and its root causes that we see in the lives of children. But what World Vision does is World Vision has a very holistic model in how it deals with it. So one, it could be from education to health, to malnutrition, to livelihoods, but the whole holistic piece of it that doesn't just look at the child, but also the family and the community. So we've been doing this for 75 years. And in those 75 years, World Vision has impacted so many lives across the world. So that's what I get to do, change the lives of the most vulnerable children across the world.
Talk to me about obviously World Vision is, I would say, a faith-based charity, but does a bunch of work in loads of different contexts that aren't Christian faith.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about the importance of faith for you in your sort of leadership thinking, and maybe the connection to World Vision UK, why you feel like that was a particularly strong connection?
Yeah, I feel faith for me has always been part of my journey. It's my life, it's who I am, it's what I do, it's how I grew up. So if I remember from a childhood, I grew up in a home where my dad was a Muslim and my mom was a Christian. So I at a very early age, I had an experience of both faiths, and growing up in a household where both faiths were sort of evident side by side. I had a grandmother who was a Baptist who, every time I visited, I'd make sure we walked down the dusty roads to church, not just on Sunday, but during the week and back, So that's been part of my life all through. So coming into World Vision, where we serve people of all faiths and none, so we don't discriminate in terms of how we serve, but the underpinning values, for what we do and why we do what we do and why we have to do it with excellence is because of a belief, at the end of the day, that every child deserves the best. Every child, irrespective of the condition or where they're born, deserve the best. They're no different from my children. My children just happen to have been born in the UK, so I have access to everything. But my aspirations for my kids is the same as anybody's aspirations for their kids, whether they're in Ethiopia, Sudan, Afghanistan, and all of that. So all of that influences the way I work, the way I lead, and the way I think. So in my leadership role here now at World Vision, faith helps me on those very challenging days, those very challenging moments where it feels like, how are we going to get this job done? I can lean back on my faith, and that gives me hope. In those moments where there is chaos all around, I can lean on my faith, and that gives me peace. In those moments where I don't have a clue, what the best decision is to make in that context, I can lean on my faith and I can ask for wisdom. So it's very much inbuilt into the stability and the confidence that I have as a leader, in knowing that I am in a place where I am destined to be for now. And there's a good reason for it, and it's to help World Vision do what it has been called to do and to impact more children, across the world.
Yeah, brilliant. So you talked about sort of, influencing what you're destined to do. The question I had earlier, and I want to ask it now, is what are your thoughts on sort of manifestation? It's almost like you made this happen through, some sort of. You put this idea out into the world. You're on the board before this. Like, there's lots of things that you could say you sort of put the idea out into the world. So yeah, just curious about, what do you think about when you think about manifesting your own sort of destiny?
I think it's a tricky one. So I started off as an architect, and at that point in time, I really thought I was going to be an architect for the rest of my life. That was my destiny. That was what I saw as my destiny. And somewhere along the way, my path started to take different shapes and different from HSBC to IBM. It almost felt like I was being guided into different ways. And I'm quite an ambitious, adventurous, courageous, driven personality type like person. I'm difficult to box in. So and I didn't realize this when I was younger. I realized this as I was growing older and older. So it isn't a surprise to me now, the way my career sort of went. But I didn't map it out. At no point have I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to be the CEO of World Vision UK in 2023. So to get there, I need to have this experience, that experience, that experience, that. It was never like that. It almost felt like things and doors and opportunities opened for me at different stages of life, and doors and opportunities that I hadn't even planned. So it's only now that I can look back, and in everyone I've been able to look back, and I now understand why I have had that pathway that I have had. So when you talk about manifestations, it's a little bit different because yes, I feel I'm where I should be now, but I also don't feel I planned it so when I joined the board of World Vision UK, I didn't join the board. I joined the board because I saw an organization that was making huge impact. I could see the numbers, I could evidence it, I could feel it. And for my corporate world, I need to be able to evidence and feel things and know that it's real and not just words written somewhere. So that's why I joined the board. At no point did I ever think this was going to happen. So yes, manifestations in the sense that I feel very guided into the paths that I have taken, but definitely not planned in the way that I thought it was going to go when I was 16, 17, and 18.
How important, I mean, you mentioned your sort of adventurous spirit, but how important is adventure to you?
It's very important. It's important because it keeps me excited about the future. It keeps me knowing that the best is yet to come. So as good as today is, there's a sense in me that says, the best is yet to come. And that keeps me taking advantage of opportunities. That keeps me not being afraid to step out of my comfort zone. That keeps me challenging myself, both in terms of the good and the bad, the strength, the weaknesses, the areas for development, because I feel I'm growing into something that will be of greater benefit to society. So I think it's a very big part of my life, because if I wasn't adventurous, there would have been opportunities I would have said no to, either because I felt it was so far off from what I ever thought about before, or maybe I felt not qualified, or whatever those reasons are where people don't take opportunities. So for me, being adventurous is very much aligned to being able to take opportunities that challenge me, but I grow through each one of them.
Yeah, brilliant. And I suppose linked to that, in the research I was doing, you've talked about learning from failure with this sort of adventurous approach, and that really resonates for me. It's like this adventurous approach means that you're going to meet a lot of failure at the same time. So talk to me about your sort of point of view on the importance of failure.
I'm not afraid to fail. And I encourage a lot of people not to be afraid to fail, because you learn. So I talk a lot about seasons in life. I talk about season starts and seasons end. And I say to many people, and this is what I believe, that in every season, I have to learn something. I learn something about myself, which is good, and something bad about myself, not bad, but something to work on kind of thing, and I learned something also about my relationship with other people, my faith in everyone. So for me, failure is part of life. If you never fail, you will never deal with certain stress buttons that you need to deal with to be able to be successful in them later on. So failure for me are things, opportunities to learn, and I think everybody has to, I mean, most people have to embrace failures, because if not, you will limit yourself. You'll have limitations because you're so risk averse, and you want to play it safe. I don't like playing it safe. That has its good points and its bad points. Ask my husband, but I, I don't like to play it safe. I like to sort of stretch, and stretch myself. And that's how I've grown. I'll be honest with you, Dave, if you ask me, how have I grown in terms of my leadership skills, in terms of my knowledge base, in terms of my experience, in terms of my ability to work with all kinds of people of, at whatever levels they are, whether I'm in a board meeting or I'm on the field working with children, all of that has come because I've taken risks and I've stepped out of my comfort zone. So I love adventure. I love it. It keeps me moving.
Yeah. What's good leadership to you?
Good leadership to me is people, because ultimately, as a leader, I am leading people and influencing people. So when I think about good leadership, it's about my leadership style and how that is influencing people to deliver to whatever it is we're trying to deliver to. So how do I motivate? How do I influence? How do I inspire people around me around a common vision or a common goal? That is good leadership to me. Another thing that good leadership to me is integrity, leading with integrity and authenticity. So say what you mean and do what you say. Don't be honest. Be truthful with people. That to me is good leadership. I also think good leadership involves humility a lot. It involves a lot of humility for me, and being able to be vulnerable, and to say, yes, I got that right, but maybe I didn't get that right sometime. And that's okay, because I'm learning from the people that are around me. I believe that wisdom is always in the room. So no one person is the order of all the answer. It's in the room. And part of my job is to hear the room and to be able to use that to guide me in some of the decisions that I make.
One of the things that's come up in various episodes is actually it's quite a hard job sometimes for somebody in your role and position to ensure that you're getting like real honest feedback, because in a way you're sort of like the scary CEO. Like so what are you doing to make sure that you're sort of seeking and getting feedback that's really helpful, and people aren't sort of telling you what you want to hear because of your role?
Yeah. Very good question. So there are things like breakfast that I do. Um, I constantly do poll surveys which are anonymous. So after every all staff meeting, for example, I'll say, okay, let's do a poll survey and just give me feedback. And it's totally anonymized. So you can be saying it was good to it was really, really bad. I think that's very, very important. I think I walk the room. So most days you will see me walking the floor. So we've got 3 floors here, and I start down and I walk. And that's informal chat, because, you need both the formal channels, but you need the informal channels where people, you just stumble into a conversation and you're part of that conversation, and people loosen up and they're able to tell you really the honest truth rather than the CEO truth. So I love walking the floors as well a lot, just to get the lay of the land. And of course I have my, they're the leadership team structures through which things are, but that all of that is more formal. For me, the informal bits, are the places where you really hear the honest heart of people.
So last question before we do some sort of quick fire stuff. How do you envisage the international development sector sort of evolving over the next decade? Yeah, I'll leave it as ambiguous as that.
I think the sector is changing significantly. I I have, what is changing the most for me, if you were to ask me, is I think we're looking a lot at the capabilities and the skill set for the future. So I feel that there's some dialogue buttons in the sector over the next few years, things to do with efficiency, value for money, cost save, all those things that we just need to dial up a little bit. And the reason for doing it is not necessarily just because there's less money within the sector, but also because the needs are also greater, in the context in which we are working, so there's greater need. So we have a responsibility to find ways to respond to that. So I think that'll be one of the key drivers going forward. I think another thing that we will see as the sector changes is more creativity, in terms of how do we respond to some of the large challenges around us. So the old ways won't work. So I think there'll be more collaboration and more creativity around how we do things better together. So in the next decade, I hope as a sector that we keep caring, we don't forget, we don't become very insular. I know countries are thinking about national interest, but we can get that balance right between, yes, looking after our national interest, but also not losing the heart, in us that cares deeply about other people. So I think that's what my hope would be for the next decade. But I do think that we as organizations will need to go through a reinventing of ourselves.
So let's just do a few sort of quick questions to wrap up with. So when we look around, as you've just mentioned, rising needs, there's also sort of division, funding squeezes, conflict, climate change. It's quite easy to be like, oh, this is horrendous. What gives you hope for society and progress?
We've done it before. We've done it before. We've been in a situation where there was no hope, and it felt like, how are we going to do it? And we got through that. So for me, what gives me hope is when I look at, we've done it before, so we can do it again. Yes, the world changes, the context changes, the challenges changes, but the heart remains the same, and the will remains the same, and the strength remains the same. So that gives me hope that we've done it before, so we will definitely be able to get through this again, and it will be better than it was before.
Fantastic. What were your because we talked about sort of HSBC and your sort of private sector time. What were the biggest misconceptions you had about the charity sector before joining?
I didn't know about the sector, so I really thought about little charities, not large charities. I'll be honest with you. So I didn't know there were charities who operated at this scale, like World Vision does. So that was, I think, one of the things I wasn't very aware of. I think the other thing was, I felt we were different. I felt people in the commercial world and in the charity world were very, very different because we think differently. We were very business, very, kind of, and the charity world sort of was a bit trying to catch up, and trying to be, so I think there were some misconceptions around, the people side of it and the different kind of skills and capabilities between both. I think the third misconception, perhaps for me, was was really not seeing as much impact, of the work that this sector did. So I felt I wasn't sure about the value all the time, in terms of how money was being spent and why money was being spent the way it was.
And now you're in it. What are those? What are your thoughts on those same bullet points?
My thoughts on those same bullet points is there are lots of great organizations in the sector doing great things, and they're doing it at scale, which is absolutely brilliant because we need scale to meet the needs in the world today. I think on the people side, there's some great people in the sector. There are great people with great capabilities in the sector. There is still a challenge there. I think there's still a little bit of a gap there, around I think the more commercial, entrepreneurial, businessy side, and how do we complement that without losing the passion, the energy, the missions focus that the sector has. I think there's a bit of work in there, but they're definitely very, very capable, people within the space.
Final sort of rapid question. What message would you convey to young sort of aspiring professionals hoping to make a difference in sort of international development today?
I'd say do it. I'd say don't let anything stand in your way. I'd say be curious, be very, very curious, and let your curiosity drive you to action, because everybody can make a difference. You don't need to wait till you're much older. You have all the answers. From a very young age, you can start to make a difference. And I know they are the future, and I know that young people tend to be very concerned. I have three of them. They tend to be very concerned about the state of the world. So I would just say to them, follow your instincts and let nothing stand in the way.
Fantastic. Fola, thank you so much for doing an episode of Causes. Just before we wrap, I want to give everybody a space to, if there's anything on your mind that we haven't spoken about, based on the audience of sort of people probably in the sector or interested in it with also an interest in sort of their own development. Is there anything you want to say?
I guess what I would say is that I know that we're in a very, very difficult period, and I know that we are going through change at the moment. Almost everybody in the sector is. But I also think it's also an opportunity, and I am a glass half full person. And I just want to encourage people to see that the glass half full rather than half empty. And let's together look for those opportunities, because they're there. They're there. The opportunities I really believe there are opportunities there to continue to scale the work that we do. So I just want to encourage anybody, to keep looking for those opportunities and keep engaging around it. And let's keep doing what we want to do and reach everyone that needs help in the world. Let's end child poverty. Let's eliminate poverty and all the causes of it in our lifetime.
Fola, thank you so much for doing an episode.
Thank you, Dave.